Owen, we're live.
Checking live stream.
Stream is good.
Stream looks good. Sergeant's going to be starting recordings.
Loud is good.
Sergeant Hope.
Backup is rolling.
Looks good. Sergeant's going to start recordings.
Yes. Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council remote hearing on the Committee on Environmental Protection. At this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? Thank you. To minimize disruption, please place all your electronic to vibrate or silent mode. Thank you. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Thank you all very much. This hearing is now commenced. Good morning. I am Jim Gennaro, Chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection. Am I coming through okay, Sergeant?
Yes,
Coming
sir.
through okay? Okay, great. And today we'll be hearing 6 bills that aim to reduce unnecessary building illumination, speak to noise inspections, and increase brownfield program enforcement. The lighting bills being proposed will not only help the city reduce its energy usage and emissions, it will also make the urban environment significantly safer for migratory birds that transit through New York every year. I know we have people that are going to be coming and testifying about that. I appreciate that. According to the Audubon Society, New York City is located at a point of concentration on the Atlantic Flyway bird migration route, which stretches from the Canadian Arctic to the southern tip of South America. Twice a year, migratory birds fly along this path northward from wintering grounds to breeding grounds in spring and south toward warmer climates in fall. Nearly 400 distinct species are known to traverse the Atlantic Flyway during their seasonal migrations, including 11 species listed as critically endangered or just endangered or vulnerable by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. The city's more than 500 miles of coastline and wide variety of habitat do attract many migratory species to the area for resting and nourishment along their journeys, leading to Jamaica Bay, which is designated as a high priority global important bird area by BirdLife International and by the Audubon Society. All of the illumination bills were introduced at the request of the Queens Borough President back when he was a council member. Now he's Borough President, but this is where the bills had their genesis. They're being carried by other members, and we certainly do appreciate that. We also will also hear legislation intended to enforce the city brownfield cleanup program, which was launched in 2010 under the jurisdiction of the Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation, or OER, but lacked enforcement provisions being proposed today. It was I who created the first municipal brownfields program in the country in partnership with OER, and the program has been a great success. I was happy to introduce this bill to give OER the needed enforcement tools to make our brownfields program even more successful. Just by way of background, when I was chair last time, I looked into the brownfields issue. Most of the brownfield sites in New York City do not qualify for the state brownfields program, and so it was necessary for the city to create its own municipal-based brownfields program. It's very difficult to do because the city does not, possess the requisite authority to give developers of contaminated properties the appropriate, liability release. We don't have that power. But we passed this bill. We work with the state to have them cede us that power, and they're deeply engaged with us, and it's been a great success. Over 700 sites since 2010 when the program started are completely done. There are 350 in the pipeline now. We have 100 new sites entering the program, 100 new sites being finished every year. This has been a terrific success, and we're going to make it better with this bill that will give OER the needed enforcement tools to make sure that people follow the program to the letter. That's when we will hear more about that. But I'm very attached to that, and anything to this day we are still the only municipal brownfields program in the country. The city should rightly be proud of that. Let me just walk through the bills a little bit. Intro 265 would prohibit the nighttime illumination of the exterior or interior of certain classes of buildings, except when building owners have demonstrated a need for night security lighting when buildings are occupied by individuals, and when nighttime illumination is required by law, rule, or zoning resolution. The bill would permit landmark buildings to apply to the Landmarks Preservation Committee for relief from its requirements if such building is a significant part of the city's skyline. The local law would also prohibit the illumination of seasonal lighting and lighted storefront displays after midnight. We have to put Santa Claus to bed at midnight. Can't have his lights on after midnight. That was a little levity. Santa Claus, something, nothing. Okay, all right, okay. It's the holiday season. I see Andrew Farnsworth smiling. I appreciate that, Andrew. Thank you. Where are we? This local law would take effect 120 days after enactment, except that the relevant agency shall undertake the promulgation of rules prior to such date. Intro 271 would reduce unnecessary illumination in city-owned and city-controlled spaces by creating a phased timeline stipulating that 50% of city-owned and city-controlled buildings comply with occupancy sensor installation requirements by 2020, 80% by 2025, and 100% by 2030. The legislation would also require the Department of Citywide Administrative Services to submit an annual report to the mayor and the speaker of the city council outlining changes in the number of covered buildings, percentage of compliant buildings, and the number of buildings that became compliant in the previous calendar year. The local law will take effect immediately. My own anecdotal comment on this is like why the city needs a phase-in when they have total control over all these buildings are beyond me, but I'm just a chair. What do I know? Intro 274 would mandate that city-owned buildings turn off non-essential outdoor lighting between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. during peak avian migration periods from April 15th to May 31st, from August 15th through November 15th of each year. This local law would take effect immediately. That means the city gets no phase-in. Good. It shouldn't phase in. It's the damn city, for crying out loud. They should be able to turn their lights on and off without a phase-in. Again, I repeat that. Intro 2180 in relation to the results of noise inspections would mandate that DEP publish the results of their noise inspections online within 24 hours after they have been completed. This is something that DEP already does, but we're just kind of moving up the timeline on that. Intro 2190 in relation to providing noise inspection reports would require DEP and the NYPD to give a copy of the noise inspection report created after a 311 noise complaint to anyone who requires the report, anyone who requests the report and provides the 311 tracking number. The person requesting the noise inspection report would not have to submit a Freedom of Information Law request to receive the report. Intro 2460, which I talked about earlier, would grant New York City Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation the authority to issue civil penalties against any persons or entities that violate the provisions of a site management plan for a local brownfield site or the rules of the Office of Environmental Remediation. That's the office, of course, that runs the Brownfields program. This legislation would also grant the director of the Office of Environmental Remediation the power to designate other city agencies to issue administrative summonses and notices of violation and authorize designees of the office to enter private property and conduct inspections. We really need people to comply with the Brownfields program and OER to the greatest degree possible, and that's what this bill is about. I'd like to thank the really terrific staff of the committee who have done such great work over the years. The counsel of the committee, Samara Swanson, policy analyst Nadia Johnson, Ricky Chawla, and financial analyst Jonathan Seltzer. And finally, least but not last, my really terrific legislative director and counsel, Navi Kaur, for all of their hard work. And it is now is the time for me to go to my little text message about council members who are here. I'm told by this message that Councilmember Darma Diaz, a member of the committee, Councilmember Menchaca, also a member of the committee, are with us, and Councilmember Rosenthal, who is one of the sponsors of one of the bills here today. I am making acknowledgement of Councilmember Rosenthal, and if there are any more council members in attendance, Nadia, if you can just send me a text, that would be great. Now, the moderator of the council of the hearing, certainly I want to recognize Helen for a statement. I see that she has her hand up. She wants to talk about her bill. Who's moderating the hearing today?
That would be me, council member. If you'd like, Chair Gennaro, I believe Councilmember Rosenthal can then proceed with her statement after yours, and then we can move on to swearing.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It is with great pleasure that I recognize Councilmember Rosenthal for her statement on her good bill. Thank you for being here, Helen.
Thank you so much, Chair Gennaro. Really appreciate that and appreciate your enthusiasm about all things environmental. So good morning, I'm Councilmember Helen Rosenthal. My pronouns are she and her. I want to begin by thanking Chair Gennaro for holding this hearing and including my bill, Intro 24274, which will require all city-owned buildings to turn off their outdoor lights, non-essential outdoor lights, from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. during peak avian migratory periods. Every year as birds migrate over large cities, they become disoriented by bright artificial lights and often collide with buildings and windows, resulting in injury and death. In September of this year, we saw hundreds of beautiful yellow songbirds crash into New York City skyscrapers and fall dead or injured on the sidewalks. According to the New York City Audubon Society, between 90,000 and 230,000 migrating birds die from collisions with glass in New York City each year. Indeed, just next door to my office, my district office here on the Upper West Side, the Wild Bird Fund nurses hundreds of injured migratory birds who are brought in by concerned New Yorkers. They often knock on my door with a very worried look and a box, and I know to send them right next door. The volume of birds traveling across North America is truly extraordinary. We can help support the incredible ecological diversity found in our skies. I'm proud that through my bill, the City of New York will take the first step and be required to turn off outdoor lights in its thousands of properties from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. during peak migration periods. My legislation complements Councilmember Brannon's bill, which would prohibit nighttime illumination of the exterior or interior of certain types of commercial buildings. I support his bill and strongly encourage the private sector to follow suit. We should also consider other simple yet invaluable interventions. These include special tints for building windows so they're more visible to birds and also helping to prevent deadly collisions. I welcome your feedback on this short but important bill. We encourage everyone to submit their testimony, including those who testified today or those who are unable to join us today. Please send your written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov and to my office. Thank you again, and I'll pass it back to Chair Gennaro.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Rosenthal. This is a wonderful suite of bills, and I certainly thank you for your strong advocacy on behalf of not only bird wildlife, but all wildlife and all things environmental. The next council is certainly going to deeply miss your leadership in this.
Thank you. And actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention gratitude to Speaker Johnson, who I know is an amazing advocate for birds and the Wild Bird Fund. His leadership here has been extraordinary, and we need to acknowledge that. Sorry about that interruption, Chair Gennaro. But
no, I no, that was we would be remiss if we didn't say that, and thank you for saying it. I might have forgotten to say that. Shame on me, but I wish to be associated with your remarks regarding Speaker Johnson. And just and you mentioned the other bills that are being the prime sponsors being Councilman Brannan. That will be, just for the sake of the record, Councilman Brannan is the prime sponsor of Intro 265 and 271. You, of course, Helen, are the prime sponsor of 274, and the noise bills. 2180 is Keith Powers, as is 2190 and 2460, the Brownfields bill. That would be that would be me. So I think that kind of rounds out the record. And with that, and having not received another text saying that there's any other council members to recognize, Mr. Moderator, I think we're ready for the first witness from the administration.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for joining our virtual hearing. I'm Council Chris Sartori, and I'll be moderating today's hearing. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that you'll be on mute until you are called on to testify, at which point you will be unmuted by the hosts. I will be calling on panelists to testify, so please listen to your names, as I will be calling on periodic folks to speak after the current people. Please be aware that there could be a delay in muting and unmuting, so please be patient. And again, please listen for your name to be called. We'll begin with testimony from the administration, which will be followed by testimony from members of the public. During the hearing, if council members would like to ask a question, please use the Zoom raise hand function, and I'll call on you in order. We'll be limiting council member questions to 5 minutes, including responses. At this point, I will now deliver the oath of affirmation to the administration representatives, and I will call on each of you individually to record your answers, to be followed by your testimony. So at this point, please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Director McIntyre.
I do.
Thank you. And at this point, I will invite Mark McIntyre, Director and General Counsel of the Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation, to begin his statement.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Gennaro, members of the committee, and Council Member Rosenthal. My name is Mark McIntyre. I'm the Director and General Counsel of the Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation. OER was established in 2009. Its statutory authority is set forth in the city charter at section 15E and 57 for 1404, as well as in chapter 9 of title 24 of the administrative code. We operate the city's land cleanup program that promotes cleanup and redevelopment of vacant and contaminated land in New York City. Parenthetically, I'd like to note that Chairman Gennaro was instrumental in shepherding the bill that created this office and the city's land cleanup program through the council in 2009. Under OER oversight, landowners and developers implement remedial actions that clean up land prior to the construction of new buildings. Our land cleanup program generally works very well, and over the past decade has been responsible for overseeing the cleanup of more than 400 acres of New York City property. In operating our program, however, we have identified two areas where owners and developers sometimes violate program requirements. This bill would address both of them by establishing clear enforcement mechanisms that we can pursue. First is with respect to the OER Site Management Plan. This is the document that sets forth the property owner's obligation to maintain physical and legal controls that limit exposure to residual contamination at a remediated site. Enforcement action is needed where owners violate a site management plan by failing to submit reports certifying that long-term site controls continue to function as intended. Approximately 200 sites that have completed our program are required to inspect the long-term physical controls at their sites every year and certify their performance to OER. Owners of some of these sites fail to do so, and thus OER has no assurance that these site controls, ones that protect building occupants from residual contamination, are functioning as intended. Failure to comply with a site management plan could undermine a remedy and present a risk to public health and the environment. Thus, we need the remedy of bringing an enforcement action to bring these buildings into compliance. Second, enforcement is needed where developers participating in the city's land cleanup program ignore requirements and remediate sites without any OER oversight. Excluding OER from overseeing a site cleanup casts doubt on the completeness of the remedy and violates the central premise of a government land cleanup program. The proposed amendment would authorize OER to issue civil penalties against parties that violate site management plans or other OER program requirements to bring these properties into compliance and would ensure continued protection of public health and the environment. I'm happy to take questions from the council members who are here.
Thank you, Director McIntyre. I well remember the days in 2009 when we worked together to get this going, along with Dan Walsh and other good folks and the folks at Plan YC, and you've seen it through to the point where we have now, as I said in my opening, many hundreds of sites that have gone through the program, over 700 sites, 350 in the pipeline, and so this has gotten, I think, maybe bigger than anyone thought it was going to, and that's really great. And I thank you for your service and from the beginning until now. And just for the, of course, I know this pretty well, but for the sake of others who are watching in, like the first part, like the first remedy in this bill with regard to site controls, people should understand that, once the site is fully remediated, there sometimes has to be a technological, device within the building that would continue to operate to perhaps, outgas and vent some, residual vapors that were, in the ground. We don't want a situation where they, seep into the building and create a hazard. This is a very, very, this is very commonplace technology. I got a school that was built in my district recently, over a brownfield site, and it has, apparatus to make sure that any gases that may be below the building that may, as we say, volatilize and then come up have to be, have to be vented from the building. And so, we apply this to schools, we apply this to all buildings, and, to the extent that people, do not, maintain these devices, do not report on their, operational status, leads, OER to question whether or not they are indeed being, maintained and are working efficiently. That's really the thrust of the first action item in this bill, is it not?
Yes. Yes.
And with regard to the other, part of the bill, people, come to OER. They want to be a participant in the program. Of course, everybody wants the, liability, release, and then they get that. But what some, applicants don't want to do is, stay with the program, and then they'll come to you, after the fact and say, we're all done. We did a great job, take our word for it. And then that is a problem because we have to, almost do some kind of forensic analysis of whether or not all of the guidelines of the program were met, whether they cleaned up the proper specifications, and how do we, after the fact, like once the building has been built, endeavor to do that. It's much better if they stay with the program and work hand in glove with OER throughout the entire process. And this is really what the second action item in the bill seeks to seeks to enforce. That be a fair assessment of what we're talking about here?
Yes, Chair Gennaro, that would be.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to, put this all, on the record so that anyone who's watching will get a more full, understanding of, the remedies that we're putting forward with this bill. They are reasonable, they are necessary. Our, local brownfields program, our local, municipal brownfields program, the only one of its kind in the country, is, as I said earlier, doing more business than anyone thought it would, and it's fair to say that many of the brownfields projects that are going through OER are in the most or at least a healthy percentage of them are in the most economically distressed areas of the city where the revitalization brought on by the program is, doing the most good. I mean, I had a vision when I, came to the council of, all these contaminated sites and figuring out a way to, remove the contamination, revitalize these sites, make them, make these sites part of the community once again, where they can serve as businesses, as residences, as schools, as make them a vibrant part of the community once again. And that has happened, but we can't allow people who won't inspect their equipment or won't follow the program as they're doing their remediation to tie up and burden OEM. It's best if everyone just complies, and this is what we are affecting by this law. That's a fair statement. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. With that said, I will ask the moderator if anyone else has questions for Director McIntyre. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Chair. At this point, I'd ask any council members to please use the Zoom raise hand function to ask any questions of the panelists. And at this point, we have Council Member Rosenthal. You may begin. Sergeant gives you the cue. Thank you.
I see Councilmember Rosenthal. I'm more than happy to recognize her. Thank you for being engaged in this,
Of
Councilmember.
course.
Starting time.
I just want to state for the record, I understand the administration was not able to testify today about the nighttime illumination bills, and I totally understand that. For the record, I just want to, I'll be asking them to provide a little more information about how many buildings they'll be able to remove, stop illumination for, how many are not essential, how many are essential nighttime illuminations. Also, I'll be asking them if they would be able to remove or shut down illumination both indoors and outdoors. My bill predominantly seems to very clearly talk about outdoor, but it also sort of alludes to indoor as well. And I'll be asking them to include indoor illumination as well. I also want the public to know that I'll be listening to your testimony and reading your testimony once you submit it. And if there are tweaks that I need to put into my bill, 274, I'm open to that and look forward to your feedback. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Council Member, for your great advocacy and any support I can lend to you in your endeavor to get more information from the administration. I'm happy to do that. As I've already mentioned, it always kind of gets to me a little bit when the administration, regarding its own properties, its own buildings, its own facilities, requires some kind of like phase in. It seems like they should be able to do without a phase in, but you're the expert on this, and I trust your impeccable judgment on what is fair in terms of them lying. So in the absence of the administration being here testifying on the bill, you've laid out a paradigm I think that works well, and I thank you for following up with them to make these bills the best they could possibly be. So thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. Amen. And Mr. Moderator, are there other members that wish to be heard with regard to information from Director McIntyre?
There are none at this point, Chair.
Okay. With that, I will thank Director McIntyre for his good testimony and his good work in making sure that.
Pardon me, Chair. Councilmember Ulrich had just raised his hand.
Oh, okay. Sure. It is my privilege to recognize Councilmember Ulrich, and to recognize him and also recognize him being here, and also recognize him for questions.
Starting time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to apologize for joining the call late, and my visual is not working. I'm having some technical difficulties, but I did want to jump on and see what the administration's position on Intro 265 and also 274 in particular. Did the administration take a position on those bills, 265 and 274? I do apologize for being late.
Sure, and that is something that the only thing that I can speak to with regard to that, that is not something that Director McIntyre from OER is prepared to address. I don't think he's still even on the. He is left the hearing having done. Oh no, he's here.
I'm still here.
He's here. But I was informed by the council leadership that there would be no testimony by the administration on any bill other than 2460. And so Councilmember Rosenthal is endeavoring to follow up with the administration regarding the bill that she is sponsoring, and you're talking about 265, right? Which would be a Brannan bill, but I don't know what the position of the administration is on those bills. I was just informed as chair that they were not going to be providing testimony on those bills. And so it's always better if we, do this through the hearing process and not through a process that's open to the public. But that's what we have, council member. Yes, okay, you're back on.
Sorry, yeah, I apologize. No, I do appreciate that. Again, I do apologize for being late. And I was just curious if the administration had taken a position on those bills, but I thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet, you bet. Thank you, council member. Mr. Moderator, with no one else wishing to be, is there anyone else that, any of the council members have any questions for Director McIntyre on 2460? You said no once already, but let me just, this is the final.
At this time, no, there are no other members.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I will thank Director McIntyre for his service to the hearing today. And unless you're more than welcome to stay for to listen in on the hearing. But as far as your role in terms of answering questions, you won't be called upon to do that. So up to you as to whether you want to log off or stay on and hear. Although we may have members of the public who will testify on 2460, so that actually would be good for you to hear if anyone does have that. So it was my understanding that the witnesses were basically going to be the witnesses from the public and from environmental organizations were going to be testifying on the illumination bills. But in case somebody wants to speak out on 2460, probably a good idea for you to be around to hear that. So let me amend that. So I would urge you to stay, in case someone from the public has something to add on 2460. And Mr. Moderator, I've been a bad boy. I've misplaced my witness list. I printed it out. I don't have it in front of me now. I don't want to take time to go look for it. So I'm going to depend upon you to be announcing the witnesses. Is that okay, Mr. Moderator?
Yep, that's perfectly fine, Chair. And I'll just quickly go over a quick procedural item on public panelists. At this point, we'll be turning to public testimony, and I'd like to remind everyone that we'll be calling on individuals one by one to testify. Each panelist will be given 3 minutes to speak. So once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you, and the Sergeant at Arms will give you the go-ahead to begin upon setting the timer. So please, again, wait for the sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. Council members who have a question for a particular panelist should use the Zoom raise hand function, and I'll call on you after the panelist has completed their testimony. At this point, we'll first be hearing from Catherine Skopik of the Sierra Club, followed by Caitlin Parkins.
Thank you, Chair of the Committee.
Please begin.
Thank you, Chair of the Environmental Protection Committee, James Gennaro, and New York City Council members for this opportunity to address the issues of safety for peak avian migration periods of local laws intro 265, 271, 274, all of 2018. And I also want to say that we do support the other three bills as well. And Mr. McIntyre, I would be interested to know, as we do have within our group an urban sustainability committee, and if there's any way that we can assist you in the OER with a remediation process. I would be interested to know if there's any way we can be of support to you in that. And we support the sound bills as well, the noise bills as well. My name is Catherine Skopik. I am chair of Sierra Club New York City Group, as the council said, and I'm also delegate to the Atlantic chapter. That's the state level of Sierra Club. National Audubon Society and International Dark Sky Association have teamed up in preparing a report in 2020, What You Should Know About Bird Migration and Light Pollution, and I quote, "By turning off excess lighting, we can help to provide migrating birds safe passage between their nesting and wintering grounds. 70% of terrestrial birds in North America are migratory, and 80% of those birds migrate at night. Artificial light at night can disorient birds and from their roots and cause collisions with buildings, as Helen Rosenthal, council member, has stated. And thank you, council member Rosenthal, for this wonderful bill. Back in 2015, when council member Donovan Richards was chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection, he held a hearing on nighttime lighting. I even made buttons for it, conserve nighttime lighting. I don't know if you can see that. And I also presented testimony in limiting nighttime lighting, and was quoted in the New York Times, Thursday, April 30th, 2015, referring to the visual impact of New York City's nighttime skyline. I said, "Many of us have felt a sense of pride in its beauty. However, now that we are in this climate crisis, we see these lights as something else. We see them as wasteful of energy. Today, I testify that these lights from city-owned and city-controlled spaces during peak aviation migration periods are, number one, endangering one of our most delicate, sensitive, threatened, treasured species that know no boundaries or borders, that belong to all citizens, all countries, and all cities of the world, migratory birds. And two, that in this time of accelerated climate crisis."
Time expired.
Please conclude your train of thought, Catherine.
Oh, okay. And that because of the climate crisis, we do not need unnecessary nighttime lighting. So these two issues are related. Audubon studies show that 2/3 of North America's birds are at risk of extinction due to climate change. Dim the lights, we save the birds. Dim the lights, we save the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for your good testimony and your great advocacy on behalf of the Sierra Club, both on a local level and a state level. Really privileged that you're able to join us today. And before we ask if Councilman Rosenthal or anyone has any questions for you, I just want to make a note to my legislative director, Nabi Kaur, to reach out through the council staff to find out Catherine's contact information, and so that we can relay that to Mark McIntyre from OER, because Catherine indicated a desire to play a supportive role, her and her organization, with good work of Director McIntyre and OER. So Nabi, if you could figure out how to get them connected, that would be great. And that concludes what I have. And if I don't see any questions for Catherine. So thank you very much for your dedicated work throughout the years on this issue. We're finally going to get this done, and we thank you for that. Mr. Moderator, let's call the next witness.
Our next witness is Caitlin Parkins, who will be followed by Ryan Monell.
Starting time.
Thank you. My name is Caitlin Parkins. I'm a scientist at New York City Audubon, a bird conservation nonprofit, and a member of the Lights Out Coalition. The two deadliest obstacles birds face in New York City are glass and light. And in 2019, the City Council passed Local Law 15, addressing glass and establishing the city as a leader in bird conservation. Now we must take the second step, reducing nighttime light pollution. As we just heard, 70% of North American bird species are migratory, and of these, 80% migrate at night. Millions of birds. We have radar data from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology showing millions of birds migrating over New York City every year. Artificial light at night attracts and disorients these nocturnal migrants. The bright lights of the city draw them off of their routes from up to 3 miles away. Then, unable to continue passage, they land in unsafe places, vulnerable on our sidewalks to predators and foot traffic, and with a maze of built infrastructure to navigate. But many don't even make it that far, instead crashing into lit windows, their 1,000-mile journeys ending abruptly in deadly collisions with glass. This issue captured the attention of media outlets and people across the country this fall when one of our volunteers collected 200 dead songbirds in a single morning. The compounded death toll is enormous. 230,000 birds die here every year due to window collisions. Turning off lights saves birds in 2 ways. First, it stops nocturnal collisions with lit windows, and second, it reduces the number of birds attracted to areas where they are at risk of collisions the following day. Research also shows that the collective light pollution of many buildings, the urban glow, attracts birds at a broad scale. So if an individual building reduces its lighting, birds may just collide with the adjacent one. So while we applaud individual buildings taking voluntary action, in New York City, we have over 1 million buildings. Legislative action requiring a reduction in light pollution is imperative to have a meaningful impact. Reducing light pollution will allow our migratory birds to safely pass the city or land in our green spaces out of harm's way. Local Law 15 is leading to a safer city for birds in the future, and we urge the passing of Intros 265, 271, and 274 to reduce bird deaths now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caitlin, for your good testimony. Just stay 1 second. I've just been texted that Councilmember Steve Levin, a member of the committee, has joined us. I want to acknowledge him. And Caitlin, I want to thank you and Audubon and the Lights Out Coalition, and bringing to everyone's attention the very startling statistic of 230,000 bird kills per year in New York City, I guess, that we know of or that we can assess. And so is there a chance that that number is even higher? I mean, how would we assess that?
It is. It's difficult to come up with that number. So that number was estimated via a study done over a decade ago now, basically looking at collisions, using our data from volunteer collision monitoring patrols and extrapolating to the rest of the city based on the data that we have. We also did a carcass study where we found that volunteers who are actually looking at birds or looking for birds only find about 20% of the birds that are actually on the ground. And so we're able to use that number to sort of realize that our volunteers are actually finding far fewer birds than actually are hitting windows. So that's how we came up with that estimate. In the last decade, there's been more lights and more glass added to the city skyline. So I do expect that that number is actually higher now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought and what I tried to elicit in my question. And thank you for doing that. I hope I'm not usurping the role of the moderator, but I do see that Councilmember Rosenthal has her hand up, and I recognize Councilmember Rosenthal for questions.
Starting time.
Thank you so much. Ms. Parkins, thank you so much for testifying and for your scientific information. Really appreciate that. I have a technical question actually about my own bill. In reading it, there's not clarity about whether or not it applies to indoor lighting for city-owned buildings. It explicitly speaks to non-essential outdoor illumination. Would you recommend that we be more specific in the language of the bill to explicitly refer to indoor lighting as well?
I do think that exterior artificial lighting is the most important issue to address. However, individual lit windows, birds do collide more with individual lit windows than unlit windows. So that is also important. I think the most important thing is to take a step forward in reducing artificial lighting in a way that is agreeable to folks. And so I think addressing both would be great, but exterior illumination, I believe, in my scientific opinion, is the most important.
Right. So we could prioritize one over the other, but if there's an opportunity to eliminate the indoor lighting as well, because yes, it's usually individual rooms. And to Ms. Skopvik's point, it's also important for the environment as well. And apologies if I mispronounced your name, Skopvik. But okay, got it. Thank you very much for that guidance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Rosenthal. Are there any other questions? Any other questions for this witness, Mr. Moderator?
No, Chair.
Okay. With that, I'd like to thank you once again, Caitlin, for your very compelling testimony and your pertinent data that is quite alarming. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ryan Monell, who will be followed by Christine Shepard.
Starting time.
Well, thank you, and thanks, Chair Gennaro. I'm Ryan Monell with the Real Estate Board of New York. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. First off, I'd like to say that Revenue supports reasonable efforts to protect the city's avian population and is proud to partner with the Audubon Society on the Lights Out initiative. Each year, Revenue encourages its members to participate in this initiative to turn out lights in their buildings during migration season from midnight to dawn. Promotion of this initiative continues on an annual basis for us, and we welcome the council and the city's collaboration in this matter. With that said, we do have some concerns with a few bills that are being heard today, particularly Intro 265, which would actually prohibit nighttime illumination of the exterior or the interior of any building whose main or dominant occupancy is classified in Group B or M pursuant to the New York City Building Code. Revenue and its members share the goals of reducing our carbon footprint, which is also, we believe, one of the intent of this bill in terms of limiting emissions. However, for several operational reasons, Intro 265 is unlikely to reduce carbon emissions and instead poses substantial problems for the city that never sleeps. Indeed, realizing the goals of this law would dramatically disrupt the operations of commercial buildings where significant activity occurs at night. Further, commercial buildings by code are required to have a certain amount of threshold lighting on at all times. This includes all stairwells and elevators and elevator lobbies, major paths of egress, and common areas to aid in safe circulation through building spaces. Additionally, the bill is silent to newer structures with marquee exterior lighting, such as the World Trade Center and One Vanderbilt, both of which were subject to significant design review, and how they would be treated under the statute is very unclear. Finally, lighting at night also plays an important role in increasing public safety by increasing visibility on streets that can help deter crime. As a result, we're opposed to Intro 265, absent significant modifications to address the many operational concerns raised by this bill. Going to the brownfield legislation, Intro 2460. The New York Brownfield Cleanup Program is targeted towards remediating and repurposing contaminated and blighted areas known as brownfield sites. However, a robust enforcement mechanism is vital to maintaining the integrity of the program. The bill language that is proposed today in 2460 appears overly broad. It could ultimately unintentionally penalize well-intentioned actors or entities. The bill is inconsistent with existing OER programs and should be refined to target the problem of select subset of second-party noncompliance. This should include any such person as transferee, successors or assigns, rather than referring to an entity. There also is a lack of recourse mechanism to ensure participants have due process. And as a result, we'd be happy to work with the council and the city to craft legislation that meets these goals by revising these concerns. As always, we appreciate your consideration of these points. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I didn't see that coming on the on 2460, and so we have to take a look at that pretty quickly. If you could, set something up with Nabby, you know how to get her, and let's get this, let's get this discuss. That way, so we would want to move quickly on that. With regard to 265, Councilman Rosenthal has, she is number 2 on, 265. I'm going to, defer to her to pose questions to you on your opposition to certain aspects of 265. So I recognize Councilman Rosenthal to engage with you in colloquy, and if need be, because she is a member, I'm willing to suspend the 5-minute rule. Like, we'll see how that goes. Okay, because it's like important stuff. We got to get this worked out. Okay. I recognize Councilman Rosenthal.
Great, thank you
Starting
so
time.
much. I appreciate that, Chair Gennaro. Thank you, Sergeant, and thank you, Committee Council, for unmuting me. Ryan, really appreciate your feedback, and of course, I'm not the lead sponsor of the bill, but I would just want to or urge the sponsor to look through your testimony sort of point by point. From what I heard you say, I don't think the bill requires, I think your concerns are ones that are not, don't arise with the bill. In other words, I don't think the bill is talking about elevator lighting or stairwell lighting or lobby floor lighting, all of those things which are critical for security. So I would ask you to think about that in terms of your testimony. Similarly, the bill has a waiver built into it that people can reach out. And similarly, when I read the bill, I don't read it the way your testimony seems to be opposed to it. So I would hope that you could have a thoughtful conversation with the bill drafter. Maybe you could tell me something compelling. I love, working with you. I just didn't see it I didn't understand why
Understood.
your testimony resulted in a no.
I appreciate it. And just to be clear, we do, number one, as I mentioned, we very much appreciate the opportunity to work with the Audubon Society on the Lights Out initiative. It's been a really important initiative for a long time, and many of our members take it very seriously.
Yeah.
And so any opportunity to continue that effort through legislation is really important to us. Look, I think that we just have great concern as it pertains to the operation and management of buildings, particularly as it pertains to indoor illumination, and how that really interacts with this legislation from a practical perspective. We do understand there are exemptions that are outlined in the bill. With that said, and also rules promulgation that would have to happen with the Department of Buildings in particular. But with that said, we do see unforeseen consequences that could lead to issues as it pertains to safety and building operations. We also, we're looking at 260,
Another bill.
265 through the lens of sustainability as well, which we know is incredibly important, not only to the council, but to also many of our members who are looking to lower their building's carbon footprints through Local Law 97 and other issues.
I would just ask,
see how this really adds to that in a practical way. So look, I think we're intent on working with the council to find opportunities to come to a good solution. But as it pertains to 265, we see some issues as it's currently written.
Yeah, again, with all due respect, I'm just not reading the legislation the way you are. And, I just wanted that to be on the record again, because I will have no role in negotiating this bill. So, but I just wanted the record to reflect that I'm not seeing what you're raising. And I, appreciate the group of buildings you represent 100%. I just think that in order to have a good, my recommendation to you would be sort of off the record, on the record, is to present concerns that are real concerns, and you'll have a higher likelihood of trying to figure something out. But by including things that I think are extraneous to what the bill is getting toward, I don't think it helps the argument. But again, I say that with all due respect and understanding that you represent a wide group. The only other the only other point I wanted to raise is that in my bill, the lights out starts at 11. And I heard in your testimony that you urge your buildings lights out starting at midnight.
Mhm.
And so you might want to have a discussion with Audubon Society about following best practices there. And maybe it would be easy enough as you work with your buildings and encourage them to sort of do things that they start lights out at midnight. I mean, at 11 instead.
We're
of-
certainly happy to do so, Councilwoman. And even though you're not the lead sponsor of this piece of legislation, 265, we would appreciate any opportunity to work with you in your office as we work with the main sponsor and Chair Gennaro on this legislation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think my guidance would be focus on the points that are real so that everyone can really know what we're trying to negotiate around. Otherwise, it's sort of noise and it makes it harder.
Understood.
Anyway, but I agree with you also on unintended consequences and wanting to make sure that doesn't happen. I think everyone can be on the same page with this bill and achieve our goals of lights off indoors and outside illumination in nighttime. Okay, thanks so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Back
you.
to you.
Thank you, Councilman Rosenthal and Ryan. Once again, I'll make a note to my legislative director Abby that she get the full text of your testimony. We no longer have Mark McIntyre on the hearing that I can see. So Nabby, I'm talking to her now. We have a little bit of scrambling to do to make sure that we get because anytime I hear the red flag of potential danger to people who work in buildings and balancing the reality that street illumination is a crime deterrent. We have to take a very close look at that. And so if you can get your full testimony, which you probably already submitted, but just make sure that my legislative director Nabby has that, send that to her right now. And then Nabby and I can interact with central staff, the council, and the administration to find out where they are kind of on these issues. And I see
Sounds
that
great.
council. Sure, yeah, you bet. And I see that Councilman Rosenthal wants the final word on
Is
this.
back
I'm
at
happy
it.
to recognize her. Happy to recognize her again.
Not final words, sir. Absolutely, Chair. Always defer to you. But I think what I'm trying to say is that we are all focused on making sure our streets are safe. And illumination from lobbies and from external, lighting at lobbies, I think is incredibly important. I think if we were to bring Ms. Parkins back from Audubon, she would say that lighting having to do with safety is very different than what the Audubon Society knows for a fact is a problem with lighting on buildings above the first and second floor. So again, I would urge you to rewrite your testimony to focus on things that are actually problematic, right? no one, I would agree 100% with Chair Gennaro and you that we certainly don't want to do anything that would cause our streets to be dark and therefore not have safety. But the assertion that this bill, Councilmember Brannon's bill, results in less safety on the street, I think is erroneous.
Well, I mean, again, Councilwoman, with all due respect, and we're not trying to make broad accusations or work in bad faith. You know, we want to find opportunities to find consensus and work with all
great
interested parties and make something work.
Great.
That's good for everybody. So
yeah, no, I agree. It's just easier to address issues when we're focused on the ones that are problematic. Like, yeah. I would argue probably that what REBNY, in representing its buildings, would be most concerned about is those buildings that don't pay attention and have, you know, rooms in commercial buildings lit at night because people were too lazy to turn the off switch.
Yeah.
Right. That's, I think, your real argument, at which point, gosh, let's have a discussion about that. Is it possible for those buildings to use technology that where, you know, after 11 o'clock at night, you know, the lights only go on if someone's there, right? Or
Right.
someone turns on the switch, and otherwise the lights automatically turn off, right? Again, wanting to be very sure that we're not causing a safety problem for, say, the cleaning people who are there at night doing their job, and we wouldn't want to put them in unsafe, dark situations, right?
Mm.
For sure. Can't emphasize that enough. So I just think that when you negotiate this bill with everyone in the council, whoever the proper people are, focusing on those issues, which are real issues,
Yeah.
would help guide the conversation as opposed to street safety and needing lighting on the streets. I'm pretty confident.
I understand. And I can assure you that our members are focused on any efforts to create greater sustainability for their infrastructure, as well as safety. And certainly the efforts through these pieces of legislation today, we're more than happy to talk in great specificity in regards to what can be done to make things work. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that clarity.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councilman Rosenthal. Thank you, Ryan. Please, send that stuff over to Nabby, and we'll on both 2460 and 265 and whatever else you have on your mind, because we want to, come to closure on this. So, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Always good to speak with you. And with that, I'll ask the moderator to call the next witness.
Thank you. Our next witness is Christine Shepard, who will be followed by Lisa Cole.
Starting time.
Thank you, council members, for listening to my testimony. I'm Dr. Christine Shepard, Director of American Bird Conservancy's Glass Collisions Program. I've been working on problems caused by excess artificial lighting at night and its negative impacts on birds and on people for about 20 years now. One important thing that I've learned is that this is a complex problem that we can't fix one building at a time. It's not just lights from tall buildings that attract birds and impact people. Even ground level lighting of streets and parking lots can actually have an effect. In addition to luring birds into danger, causing depression and other effects on people, unnecessary night lighting wastes money, wastes energy, creates greenhouse gases, and makes it impossible for us to see the stars. New York City has recognized the importance of birds to sustainability with Local Law 15 of 2020, The approach with this legislation is an excellent one that could make a huge difference both locally and by inspiring other jurisdictions to follow suit. American Bird Conservancy strongly supports legislation restricting lighting at night in New York City. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Shepherd. Certainly appreciate the benefit of your views. And so I would take it that you indicate that you're in favor of the bills that would restrict illumination. So we're going to put you on the record as supporting 265, 271, 274, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I got that straight. So you're you're in favor of that suite of bills.
Absolutely.
And if I may ask, what species of bird is behind you in your graphic?
That's a marvelous spatule-tailed hummingbird.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I never seen anything like that. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and make sure that you submit your good testimony in writing to our staff, so we have the benefit of the full scope of your statement.
Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Moderator, if there are no questions for Dr. Shepherd, we can proceed to the next witness.
Okay. Our next speaker is Lisa Cole, who will be followed by Kathy Nizari.
Starting time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Council Member Rosenthal, for her bill and for recognizing the Wild Bird Fund. Avian migration is a massive nocturnal event. 12 million birds were detected flying over Cape Cod on a single autumn night. We don't know much about how they navigate, but scientists tell us they are drawn to light. I'm Lisa Cole from the Wild Bird Fund, New York City's only wildlife rehabilitation hospital. Thank you for hearing our testimony today, supporting the proposals to reduce light pollution and help birds, specifically Bills 265, 271, and 274. During migration seasons, we admit hundreds of birds injured by collisions with buildings. It isn't a steady flow. Some days just a few birds are brought in, but sometimes by 10 a.m., dozens of new collision patients wait for care. A recent study from Cornell by Van Dorn and colleagues, including Dr. Farnsworth, who testifies today, may tell us why this happens. The scientists studied 20 years of bird collision data from Chicago's McCormick Place, a conference center on the shores of Lake Michigan, notorious for bird strikes. They found collision risk linked to 3 factors: number of birds migrating, wind, and light. Exterior lighting was important. Since Chicago began its lights out policy, collisions at McCormick decreased by 80%. But interior lighting was very important too. Decreasing the area of lit windows by half reduced collisions by 6 or 11-fold. Wild Bird Fund experience is consistent with their results. Days of largest patient intakes often follow nights of heavy migration when weather is poor. And disproportionately more patients come from the commercial, brighter lit areas of town. Imagine being on a plane landing in New York on a stormy night. That moment when the aircraft breaks through the clouds and you see the bright lights of the city, the towers of Wall Street, the blaze of Times Square. That's what birds see too, except to get through the storm, there's no plane to guide them, and their innate navigation system is confused by light. They arrive to find an obstacle course of tall buildings, and the next day, a maze of mirrors. Please help these wild visitors avoid getting waylaid or worse in our city by passing the legislation before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa, very much for not only being here to testify, give us the benefit of your views, but also your great advocacy in terms of tending to medically those birds that have been hurt by this phenomenon of light in New York City. We certainly do appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair.
And we would urge you to submit to council staff the full text of your remarks so we can get the benefit of your views. And the sooner the better on that, because we're coming to closure on the session and we want to get everyone's good view.
Yes, thank you.
Again.
We shall, yes. And our director, Rita McMahon, is also testifying today.
Oh, great. We look forward to her testimony as well.
Thank you.
And if there are no questions for Lisa, Mr. Moderator, we'll move to the next witness.
Okay, our next speaker is Kathy Nazari, who will be followed by Sherry Reich.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gennaro and members of the Environmental Protection Committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about an issue that impacts the lives of millions of migratory birds each year and also impacts everyday New Yorkers in our sidewalks. My name is Kathy Nazari, and I am the co-chair of the Village Independent Democrats, VID Animal Welfare Committee, and lead organizer of the Lights Out Coalition. As we now turn the corner on fall, we also complete a violent cycle of unnecessary and completely preventable deaths of migratory birds who fly by New York City along the Atlantic Flyway on their way south. Each spring and fall, millions make this journey, and over 200,000 of those birds die in our city from colliding with glass windows and disorienting artificial nighttime lights. That's only in New York. Up to 1 billion birds die from colliding with tall glass buildings across the country annually. Intros 265, 271, and 274, collectively the Lights Out bills, are designed to limit light pollution in New York City. These bills not only reduce the death toll of migratory birds, but they also help conserve electricity and tackle light pollution. Intros 271 and 274 are focused on city-owned properties that are unlikely to be occupied at night. They create reasonable time limits on lighting, only apply during the migratory period, and also give the city the tools it needs to comply with the limits by installing building occupancy sensors on city property. Intro 265 extends nighttime lighting restrictions to businesses, but only when it is safe to do so, and exempts small businesses. VID is part of one of the largest coalitions of animal protection organizations in New York that have joined together in support of the Lights Out bill. You will hear from, and you've already heard from, some of our coalition members today, and you will also hear from others via email. In addition, over 27,000 people from across the city have signed a petition in support of these bills. Supporters range from advocates, ordinary New Yorkers, to real estate developers and owners of some of the tallest skyscrapers in the city. We are all standing together to speak up because the hundreds of thousands of migratory birds who die unnecessarily each year do not have a voice. Dozens of cities across the country have enacted Lights Out, and Suffolk County is enacting a light pollution amendment to their county code to reduce sky glow. New York City must get on board. Therefore, we thank Helen Rosenthal and Justin Brannon for sponsoring these bills and urge you all to pass intros 265, 271, and 274 to dramatically reduce the senseless death and injury to birds. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kathy, for your very compelling testimony and for your great advocacy on behalf of the now with the Lights Out Coalition. You're the chair of the Lights Out Coalition, is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say it's that formal, but I was the person who put the coalition together.
Yeah, okay. By the power vested in me, I declare you the chair. Okay, and so and I was not aware of what they were doing in Suffolk County, but now we do know, and I would urge you to transmit your testimony if you've not already done so to council staff, so that we can give it the due consideration that it does deserve. And really appreciate you being with us here today. We look forward to other members of the coalition who will be speaking out in terms of the suite of bills. And so thank you again. And Mr. Moderator, if there are no questions for Kathy, we can move to the next witness.
Very well. Our next speaker is Sherry Reich, who will be followed by Edita Bernkrant.
Starting time.
Hello, Chair Gennaro and New York City Council Committee members on environmental protection. My name is Sherry Reich with the League of Humane Voters, and we are part of the Lights Out New York City Coalition. I can remember my childhood days walking outside in the spring and summer and hearing the chirping and songs of birds. If I was quick enough, I would see a fleeting image of them as they bounced from tree to tree. Honestly, the sounds today are not the same. There are far fewer birds that I now hear. Sadly, more than 22 species were listed as extinct this year, several of them being birds. Birds who fly in New York are more likely to have collisions with buildings due to the lighting and the light pollution they create. We must protect the biodiversity of our world. What would our world sound like without the beautiful songs of birds? Or walking in Central Park and finding no birds to view through our binoculars? We are lucky enough to live on the Eastern Corridor, one of the biggest migration paths of birds. It is a joy to see all the different species of birds, and if only for a moment, view them with awe and wonderment. It is incumbent on us to ensure that they have safe travels. City lights confuse birds during their migration, and in general, they are often paralyzed, flying in circles, having lost their way. The light pollution is such a threat to birds as it causes the birds to collide into the buildings. These collisions cause injuries and sometimes death. The lucky ones are rescued and rehabilitated and released, but not every bird is lucky. And those that do help these injured birds do so out of their own pockets, since New York City does not aid wildlife rehabilitators. We must take action before it is too late and save the birds who either migrate through New York City or who make New York City their home. Please co-sponsor and pass the 3 bills to limit light pollution in New York City, Intros 274, 265, and 271. I want to personally thank Councilmember Rosenthal for her important bill, as I am her constituent. I also recognize the miraculous work of the Wild Bird Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry, for your very, compelling and moving, testimony. It is great to receive, testimony that not only comes from an illumined mind, but an open heart. That's what I think we have in your testimony. And yes, we all will be crying when Helen leaves the council. That is for sure. And so I appreciate your service on behalf of the League of Humane Voters and all of your good advocacy on this suite of bills. I would not bet against the passage of these bills. And so thank you for joining the chorus of people who want us to make this a safer city for birds. Really appreciate you being with us today. And I'm going to cry when Helen leaves too. Trust me. So, and with no questions for Sherry, Mr. Moderator, we can call the next witness. Although recognizing that Sherry is a very hard act to follow,
Will do very well. Agreed. Our next speaker is Edita Bernkrant, who will be followed by Steve Gruber.
Starting time.
Thank you, committee. My name is Edita Bernkrant. I'm the executive director of NICLAS, and we're an animal protection and environmental advocacy organization based in New York. We have hundreds of thousands of members across New York, and we really are strongly in support of the 3 bills, Intro 265, 271, and 274. I just sort of see these as a win-win. This has been a long problem for such a long time. You've heard all the amazing testimony from others, and I don't need to repeat that, but I will say that, I'm personally a huge bird lover. I spend a lot of time at the Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge and just love observing wildlife, and so do so many other New Yorkers. And I've gotten so many frantic calls and emails from people devastated, horrified at finding all of these beautiful dead birds at, the foot of so many buildings. And as we heard before, hundreds of birds often during peak migratory times. And this just doesn't have to happen. And it shouldn't be happening anymore. And I see this as a win-win, cutting down light pollution that's affects quality of life for people. And if we can save hundreds of thousands of these amazing, beautiful birds that so many people appreciate. It's a win-win. And I personally have been involved with rescuing injured birds, and the Wild Bird Fund is so overwhelmed. There's only so many rescues they can do, and so many don't make it to their doorstep. And passing these bills would really set a tone and make New York a leader in this way. And I just also want to say it was disappointing to hear the real estate board testifying against this, kind of based on things that the bill already addresses. And perhaps if they had all these dead birds dumped at their doorsteps, they would feel differently and understand why people feel so strongly about this. I can't tell you how many times we've frantically been contacted by people who are so upset at seeing this and knowing that there's a solution here that would really be a win-win. So I just want to stress again that we strongly support this. We've been getting so much positive feedback across the city from our supporters who really want to see this pass, who many couldn't be here to testify in person, but will be sending in testimony. So I want to thank Helen Rosenthal and Justin Brannon for these bills. And I think they're long overdue. And I want to thank the committee, and I really hope that we can pass these bills out of the committee and get this passed so we go into 2022 with a lot less dead birds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adita. I see that you have a cat in the background who I'm sure is a lover of birds in his or her own way. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And we gotta watch out for that. My wife and I rescued 5 cats and only found homes for 2. And so we have 3. So we have, plenty of bird lovers in our house as well, except, my cats tend to look at birds in a different way than I look at them, certainly appreciate all the work that you and, NICLAS do on, so many issues, and very much appreciate your good testimony, and appreciate you being here today, and others that you'll reach out to on behalf of these bills.
Thank you so much.
We do thank you for that, and with if there are no questions for this witness, Mr. Moderator will go on to the next witness.
Next up is Steve Gruber, who will be followed by Lawrence Schneff.
Starting time.
Hi, good afternoon. I actually have 3 cats here who are listening intently to me talking about birds. So thank you for that, Chair Gennaro. My name is Steve Gruber. I'm Director of Communications for the Mayor's Alliance for New York City's Animals. And I'd like to thank Chair Gennaro and the members of the Committee on Environmental Protection for the opportunity to speak today on intros number 265, 271, and 274, 3 bills that are designed to limit light pollution in New York City. Since our inception in 2003, the Mayor's Alliance has worked toward improving the lives of animals in New York City. Our primary mission has been centered on improving the welfare of owned and homeless pets, but our concerns have always extended to the welfare of all animals, including wildlife, with which we share our community. As a member of the Lights Out Coalition, the Mayor's Alliance joins our colleagues in support of these 3 important bills. While we understand that light pollution creates a wide range of negative consequences, our focus is on its effect on wildlife, particularly migratory birds. We know they are drawn to light. We know that on evenings during migration seasons, birds will alter their paths and approach areas with increased light pollution. We know that this will cause them to lose their way and lure them toward tall glass buildings. And we know, unfortunately, the devastating results of our winged friends whose lifeless bodies litter our streets after colliding with buildings. Our friends at the Wild Bird Fund do a heroic job working to save and rehabilitate the birds that survive. But thousands of these precious birds don't survive, and that's a tragedy we can prevent. Intros 274, 265, and 271 can reduce light pollution in New York City without disrupting our quality of life. By implementing these new measures, we can actually improve the quality of life for New Yorkers by ensuring that non-essential lighting does not disrupt their sleep schedules. And by doing so, we can save the lives of countless birds, save the city money, and reduce our carbon footprint. So these proposals are a win-win for everyone, human and non-human alike. New York City has acted before to reduce harm to our winged friends who pass through our city. We turned off the twin beams of light in tribute to 9/11 victims during peak migratory times. And in 2019, the New York City Council passed legislation that requires bird-safe glass in new construction. But unfortunately, that bill does not impose requirements on existing buildings. We need to do more if we are to further reduce injury and death to the migratory birds.
Please finish your thoughts.
Okay, we need to do more to further reduce injury and death to the migratory birds who travel New York City's airways. And we therefore support the passage of these bills to make New York City a safer, gentler pass-through for our migratory bird visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And, thank you for providing a great home to 3 cats. As I do, and then we had one that we brought in, and for like 3 months, and she was the mother of the litter, and she just didn't want to hear about like domestication, just wasn't having it, and so now she lives in our backyard in like a heated kitty condo, with like 3 squares a day, and she does just fine. We wish she'd come indoors, but she didn't want to know about it. And anyway, so now that's on the city council record. So it's funny what I put on the record, but that is on the record. And I see that Councilmember Rosenthal has some questions for you. So I recognize Councilmember Rosenthal for questions.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Chair. Steve, can I ask you, I couldn't quite understand your title or the organization.
If I could just jump in for a second with a note to the sergeants to, I think we have to have the 5-minute clock for council member questioning at this point to get through the hearing. So
thank you.
I'll just put that on.
Thank you. Steve, are you speaking on behalf of the mayor's office?
No, the Mayor's Alliance for New York City's Animals.
What is that organization?
We are the Mayor's Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2003 to basically transform New York City into a no-kill city by reducing euthanasia at the city shelters. So we worked through the years with over 150 rescue groups and shelters and animal care centers of New York City to reduce the euthanasia at the shelters.
Sure.
And
yeah,
okay.
I'm focused on the birds today, but gotcha. Thank you. And so would your organization, nonprofit organization, are you submitting for the record support of these 3 bills?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Okay,
we have.
And so you've submitted that testimony.
You're right. When I
Okay,
registered,
that's really
yes.
helpful. And then I wanted to ask what you thought about in terms of making 2 tweaks to my bill. One, that for the city-owned buildings, that it include the indoor illumination as well as to the exterior of the building. For the record, do you support that?
I think we would support that. I mean, it's not something that I'm an expert on, exterior versus interior lighting,
Yeah.
but it seems to me that either, both actually, a
I mean, if
reduction
we have
would
an
be helpful.
opportunity to do both, why not?
Right, exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
great. And then my second question, this is harder, and don't feel pressure to go on the record on this one. But what do you think about extending these requirements to city leased buildings? So in other words, my office is at 250 Broadway. City Council leases, I don't know how many floors, 4 or 5. New York State leases a bunch of floors as well for their electeds. What do you think about including a clause about this in the city leased buildings in our contracts, the city's contracts?
It seems to me it would be a good idea, again, because it focuses on reducing light pollution. So
Okay. Great.
without sacrificing anything.
Yep, same. I agree. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Gruber. Appreciate your participation in your nonprofit and taking the time to testify today. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you, Steve. We greatly appreciate you being here today, and we thank you for having submitted your testimony in writing so we could get the full benefit of your statement. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, or we're ready for the next witness.
Next witness is Lawrence Schnapp, who will be followed by Margaret Lee.
Starting time.
Hi, this is Larry Schnapp. I'm an long-term environmental lawyer. I'm also an adjunct at New York Law School. I'm an emeritus board member of the Brownfield Partnership of New York and the Brownfield Coalition of the Northeast. I'm going to be testifying about 2460. I have a couple of short comments. Before I start, I just want to let people know that I'm a bird lover too. And I had a series of talking parakeets, and the last one said, "I live in New York, and how am I doing?" But going to 2460, I support the effort to enhance the enforcement authority of OER. I think the legislation is a little bit broad because it could bring in parties that may not have actually the ability to implement these SMPs. So I was just going to suggest that OER's regulations at 43-1408 and 43-1407, referring to transfer notice of completion documents and also institutional controls, they refer to transferees and assigns. And so I think that we, instead of saying any or other oral entities or other persons, I think if we limit the borrow from the OER regulations or for the parties that are responsible for enforcing these controls and site management plans, if we use the language from the regulation, quick little tweet, I think it would work. So that's just my short comment. And I'm glad to see the chair in his position of where he should be as the head of the environmental committee, as a fellow geology major. Glad to see you back in charge.
Larry, well, I don't know about being in charge, although I do have this gavel, which is nice. If you could please, first of all, it's good to see you. It's been a long time. I was, DEC for a number of years, being a, deputy commissioner over there, and now I'm back doing this, and happy to be back, and happy to see you. But certainly, very glad that you came here to give us the benefit of your views on 2460. And if you can make sure that gets to council staff so that we can give it its proper consideration. And Navi, this is I'm talking to my legislative director now. I want to make sure you get a copy of Larry's testimony so that we can, get right to work on it. And I appreciate that. Also, appreciate your love of baseball. You got the Norman Rockwell painting, and I don't know what the
autograph back here. You can't see it because of the
right. Wow.
Yeah, Mickey Mantle signing his 500th, signing the 500th home run picture back at Daily News.
And baseball trivia will put out to all of the witnesses that if they can answer who Vic Wertz is, they'll get extra credit. Okay, and that'll be a little inside inside baseball between between you and me, Larry. We well know who Vic Wertz is, but like not that many people may. And you should go. Everyone should look that person up on Google so that you'll be kind of in with us. And so without any, if there are no questions for Larry, we'll go on to the next witness. And Larry, thank you very much for continuing to be part of the solution. We really appreciate your presence here today.
Thank you very much.
I know I do.
Thank you. Our next witness is Margaret Lee, who will be followed by Rachel Kimpton.
Starting time.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify on behalf of birds. My name is Margaret Lee. As a bird lover from Lower Manhattan, District 1, I'm acutely aware of the many challenges and levels of suffering of New York City birds, those who live here as permanent residents, and the thousands of migratory ones passing through to their seasonal destinations. I'm grateful to the council, especially Council Member Helen Rosenthal and Justin Brannan, for this act of compassion toward migratory birds in proposing Lights Out NYC to reduce or prevent their needless and horrific deaths from nighttime illuminated windows. Please pass intros 265, 271, and 274. And after doing so, please continue to put your thoughts into other ways New York City can be a more compassionate city to all our wildlife inhabitants and seasonal visitors, perhaps inspiring other cities to follow our lead. Such future bills would include, but not be limited to, education to encourage compassion for non-human animals, provision of fresh water in garden settings, fountains with running water, regular supply of seed, cracked corn, removal and banning of bird deterrent spikes, specially planned bird-inspired areas that would be conducive to rest and nourishment, and that would also inspire human appreciation of wildlife for our feathered neighbors and visitors. Banning of detergents so often used as sidewalk cleansers that so horribly poison the birds. The ultimate goal would be a wildlife-friendly New York City, a cruelty-free New York City to inspire the entire world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for all of your advocacy for the bills that are on the table today, and for your good ideas going forward. Please submit your testimony in writing so that my legislative director and myself can take some of what you said and see if we can reduce that to legislation. So we appreciate you bringing forward other good ideas, in addition to your support of the bills on the being heard today. So we appreciate that very much. And if there are no one wishing to ask questions of Margaret, we can move to the next witness, Mr. Moderator. But thank you again, Margaret, for being here. We appreciate your terrific advocacy.
Our next speaker is Rachel Kimpton, who will be followed by Andrew Farnsworth.
Starting time.
Good morning, all, and thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning. My name is Rachel Kempton, and I am representing the Feminist Bird Club. We enthusiastically support passing introductions 265, 271, and 274 in order to limit nocturnal lighting in New York City. We believe that these laws will help provide a more just and healthy city for humans and wildlife. Feminist Bird Club is an international nonprofit with a goal to promote inclusivity in birding and conservation while fundraising for and engaging in social justice issues. We have over a dozen chapters of compassionate birders throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe, with affiliated groups in Central and South America. But we started our original chapter here in New York City. I am grateful for all of the wonderful and moving testimony regarding migratory birds shared by others this morning, which I will not repeat. Since nocturnal lighting is a known hazard to both human health and migratory bird species, we are especially passionate about promoting a solution to this deadly issue. Nearly every New Yorker has experienced the negative effects of light pollution in the city, but often these impacts disproportionately affect disadvantaged communities. According to a study on light pollution by Nady Ball et al., published in 2020, looking at this issue through an environmental justice lens, they found that Black Americans, people of color, and people with low income are 2 times more likely to be exposed to excessive ambient light. These populations are already often forced to live in areas with high air pollution and within close proximity to toxic waste, compounding devastating health risks. Extending exposure to nocturnal light can cause sleep disorders directly linked to an increased chance of developing anxiety, depression, diabetes, gastrointestinal disorders, cardiac arrest, and different types of cancers. Low-income and minority neighborhoods have also been hit harder by COVID-19, leaving families devastated by death and others disabled by long COVID and thus unable to work. Passing these introductions and shutting off the lights will bring immediate relief to those who need it the most. It is also an added bonus that our avian friends will benefit as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for your compelling testimony and all of your work with the organization is called the Feminist Bird Club. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's reaching now like all over the world practically, right?
Yes, excited to share that. Yes.
Wow, that is a nice thing to share. And if someone wanted to become associated and work with the Feminist Bird Club, how would they do that? I'll give you a little plug here.
Thank you. They can look up our website and they can reach out to chapters that already exist. And if they don't have a chapter started where they're located, we welcome you to start your own. We want more people to be involved in birding, especially folks who are younger and are able to get involved sooner.
Oh, great. I'm certainly happy to give you that plug, and may your organization grow and flourish and continue to do all good works. And thank you very much for being here today. And please send us the full text of your statement. You cut it back a little because people had said a lot of that and said, but we want it in full so we can properly digest it. So thank you very much for being here. Most appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Sure. And the next witness, Mr. Moderator.
Next witness is Andrew Farnsworth, followed by Susan Harder.
Starting time.
Hello, Chair Gennaro, Councilmember Rosenthal, and members of the committee and all on the call. Thank you for giving me a little bit of a platform to speak. My name is Dr. Andrew Farnsworth. I'm a senior research associate at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I am first and foremost a birder, second a New Yorker, and probably finally a scientist. I study bird migration, and I have for the last 30 years. And what I'll be talking to you about today is really the scientific perspective on this lights out issue. As you've heard from many of my colleagues and collaborators at New York City Audubon, Wild Bird Fund, and American Bird Conservancy, light attracts and disorients birds at night. Just to frame that a little bit, on a good peak migration night across the United States, we're talking about 850 million birds aloft over the contiguous United States. Over New York City itself, we're talking on a good night, a peak night in May or October of 3 to 6 million birds. So we're talking about large numbers of birds, and the potential for trouble with those birds as a function of light is enormous. So we know from our work, some of which has been talked about previously at the Tribune and Light in Manhattan, that we can see these effects of light dramatically. When the lights are on, for example, at the Tribune and Light, birds are attracted in large numbers, up to 100 times greater than background level of migration. They circle, they call a lot because they're disoriented. When the lights go off, we see the behaviors respond immediately and birds return to normal migratory behaviors. We also have studied individual buildings. There's been some discussion about interior light today. We know from our work in Chicago that even having the amount of light from a particular bay of windows at McCormick Place could reduce casualties of bird collisions by an enormous amount, talking about 60% reduction. So interior and exterior light are important. We also know from a very broad perspective that New York isn't the only city involved, but New York is among the top 10 in terms of exposure risk when it comes to exposing birds to light pollution at night when they're migrating. So we have an opportunity to lead. There are lots of birds. There's an enormous amount of illumination, and we can absolutely do the right thing. So what I'd like to advocate is that absolutely intros 265, 271, 274, we fully support those. I'm throwing behind them the weight of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and my own work. I'm happy to act as a resource for the science behind our decision making and what we can provide. Happy to act as a sounding board as well. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of these. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farnsworth, for the scientific heft and background that you give to these proceedings. We certainly appreciate your offer to be a sounding board. If you do have your statement reduced to writing, we certainly would welcome. It looked like you were, just kind of winging it there, pardon the pun. But we would like the benefit of your full statement, particularly based on your, long history of, scientific endeavor in this field, which we recognize and thank you for. And with that said, I recognize Councilmember Rosenthal for questions for you. Councilmember Rosenthal.
Starting time.
Thank you so much. Is it Dr. Farnsworth? Okay. So Dr. Farnsworth, I don't know if you've already submitted your testimony, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to add to your testimony agreement that we should tweak the bill, my bill, 274, so that it includes the interior lighting of city-owned buildings. And so I'll ask that first, if you support that addition to my bill.
I do support that. I don't want it to be at the cost, as we've all talked about, of failing to control the exterior lighting. But I definitely believe that including the interior is important. Definitely.
Yeah, I think if you look at the language closely, it alludes to the inside of the building. It's explicit about the exterior. And what I'm wanting to know, if you'd be going on the record to say, yes, we should make the interior of the building explicit as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then secondly, whether or not you would support our adding to the bill language that refers to city leased buildings, that we have the city add to their contract with city leased buildings requiring the same thing.
I would support that. Absolutely. Yes. I think it's key because again, the more light, especially the more non-essential light that we can reduce, the better.
Great. So could I ask you to, when you submit your testimony, to include those two aspects as well? And, I'm seeing that Ms. Parkins is still on. For you, for others who agree with that idea for edits to my bill, if you could please include that in your testimony. You can resubmit, or if you've already submitted, you can submit an update to your testimony that clarifies those two additions, requesting those two additions. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your work.
Thank you, Councilmember Rosenthal. And this is what hearings are all about. We get good people come forward and give us things that we didn't think of, or they have, the proper expertise that can help us shape your, already good bill. And I, thank you, Dr. Farnsworth, for, being here today, for giving us the benefit of all your decades of expertise on this very important topic, and also for laughing at my Santa joke earlier. You know what I mean? And you could go for the trifecta and tell me who Vic Wertz is if you know who that is.
I do know that as a baseball fan. He caught
Okay, go ahead. Tell us.
He caught Willie Mays' fly ball, right? This is the. Willie Mays caught his fly ball. Sorry.
Correct, and that was the famous back to the plate catch in what year? In what year?
54, maybe.
51, but close enough. We have a winner here today, and so thank you for engaging us not only in your scientific expertise, but in some baseball and holiday fun. So we appreciate that. Please come again. Please come again. And so thank you again, Dr. Farnsworth. And with that, Mr. Moderator, now that we've got the whole Vic Wertz thing squared away and Santa Claus and all his good benefit, we'll call the next witness. Thank you.
Okay, our next witness is Susan Harder, followed by Rita McMahon.
To the members of the committee, and hello to my environmental colleagues today regarding night lighting 265, 271, 274. As the New York representative of the International Dark Sky Association, I am here in support of the measures to enact the sensible legislation to limit excessive and unnecessary night lighting and to protect the birds. Our organization helps educate municipal officials and the public on the ways and means to reduce the impacts of light pollution, namely glare, unshielded, excessive, and unnecessary night lighting. We, along with our partners with the Illuminating Engineering Society, produced a set of 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting, which could be a guide to continuing your legislative efforts to protect our nighttime environment for all creatures, great and small. These 5 principles are based in common sense and professional guidelines. 1, all light should have a clear purpose. Before installing or replacing a fixture, determine if the light is needed for safety. Consider how the use of the light will impact the area, including wildlife and for the environment. 2, light should be directed only where needed. Use shielding and careful aiming to target the direction of the light beam so that it points downward and does not spill beyond where it is needed. 3, light should be no brighter than necessary. Use the lowest light level required per professional standards. 4, light should be used only when it is useful. Use controls such as timers or motion detectors to ensure that light is available when it is needed, dimmed when possible, and turned off when not needed. And 5, use warmer color lights. Limit the amount of shorter wavelength blue-violet light to the least amount. For example, use sources rated at 2200 Kelvin, which are better for night vision. Blue light waves are problematic for many reasons. 1, night vision is impaired. The pupil contracts more in the presence of blue light, and this is all creatures. Blue light contributes to macular degeneration. Circadian rhythms are disrupted, disturbing sleep and lowering melatonin production, a tumor suppressant. With less blue, the light is warmer, more pleasant, with less glare. And since blue light waves scatter more in the atmosphere, there is greater sky glow, obscuring the stars in the night sky. The International Dark Sky Association supports the measures under consideration today. And I will add that my partner and I own over 100 residential and commercial buildings, and we are entirely in favor of the current measures. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan, for your very compelling testimony that you brought out things that people had not yet brought out. And we certainly do appreciate that. And we thank you for working with the International Dark Sky Association and for your position that as a building owner yourself, you're very much in favor of all of the measures in the of the 3 bills that deal with deal with lighting. So we thank you very much for being here and also for the painting of Starry Night behind you. That gives us additional inspiration for what a dark sky can really do for us. So thank you for that as well. And Mr. Moderator, before we just to have a little fun with Dr. Farnsworth, I did receive a text message from someone who heard me cite the year 1951. Dr. Farnsworth is right. It is 1954. That was the catch. So somebody in the hearing sent me that. So I do stand corrected. You are the undisputed champion of that issue. And with that record correction of when the catch happened, and having heard the good testimony of Susan Harder, we're ready to proceed to the next witness.
Okay, next up is Rita McMahon, who will be followed by Laura Leopardo, who was our last registered speaker.
Starting time.
Hello. I'm very thrilled to be with all of you people. This is a great gathering, and it's hard to follow you all. But I am Rita McMahon, testifying today as the co-founder and director of the Wild Bird Fund, New York City's only wildlife rehabilitation center. Every spring and fall, compassionate New Yorkers bring us migrating birds that have collided with a building or window. These birds suffer from double concussions. First, they strike the building, then they fall to the pavement below. This spring, we admitted 232 window strike patients, and so far this fall, 900, more than 1,000 patients. Our 1,000+ birds are only a tiny fraction of the actual number of window strike casualties in New York City each year. And our patients are the lucky ones who did not die immediately upon impact, but many of them are gravely injured. Now, only about half will be released so they can continue their journey. Most birds migrate at night. We have that established. Millions of birds pass through the skies above us each spring and autumn. 3 to 6 million over New York in one night. And they are drawn into the canyons of New York City at night by its bright lights. They come here to rest and feed. Some birds strike the buildings on the way in, some on the way out. We keep records of where each of our patients is found. I'd like to share some of our preliminary findings with the council. For all of New York City, 3/4 of the bird strikes occur in Manhattan, the most brightly lit borough. About twice as many of our Manhattan patients this year were found in downtown and midtown, the parts of town more brightly lit at night as compared to above 57th Street. Finally, a disproportionate number of our collision patients are juvenile birds. These are first-time migrators who need to look for cues like light to guide them on their way. Birds have migrated down the eastern seaboard for centuries. Today's collision victims are the consequence of the city we humans have built. We should do what we can to reduce their danger. Wild Bird Fund urges the City Council to approve introduced bills 265, 271, 274, and 2460, because by decreasing nighttime illumination, these bills should reduce the number of migratory bird casualties. We'll be very happy to have fewer patients. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita. I certainly appreciate your very compelling testimony where you break it down by part of Manhattan, outside Manhattan, and, you know, like a juvenile bird element. And I am going to recognize Councilman Rosenthal for questions. But before I do, you have a very sympathetic audience with regard to what you do in the Wild Bird Fund. And if there are people who are on this Zoom or watching over the telecast who want to give assistance or find out more about the Wild Bird Fund, how would they best do that?
Probably going to our website. And that's wildbirdfund.org. And there's lots of information. We do our best to educate as well as repair the birds.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'm more than happy to try to do what I can to get you, more support for what you do. And so, thank you very much for that. I'll be looking into that website myself. So thank you for that. And with that, I recognize Councilman Rosenthal for questions.
Thank you so much, Chair Gennaro. Heads up, Rita McMahon will hold your feet to the fire for your offer just now to help the Wild Bird Fund. The City Council has been incredibly generous to the Wild Bird Fund, both in expense and capital funding, and the taxpayer money has been put to very good use. So she will take you up on that offer. I can tell you that from personal experience. And then Rita, thank you so much for testifying. And, thank you so much for the work that you do, the passion you bring to the Wild Bird Fund. All of this is happening because of, yes, everyone's advocacy here today, but you do this work day in, day out. When I'm leaving the office at 8 or 9 o'clock, you're still there. When, I stop in the weekends, you're still there. You are tireless in your mission to the survival of birds. So, thank you so much for that. And it's been an honor having my office next to yours. I love coming in early and hearing the roosters crow. And love being able to stop by and see the snowy owls that you are rescuing, and the everyday birds. What you and your staff are able to do is extraordinary. And I've had the honor and privilege to watch that over the past 8 years. I hope we can continue working together after the end of my term, but I feel like this is the lasting, these 3 bills are your lasting legacy that Speaker Johnson has supported, and council members Ben and I are lucky to be the proud sponsors of. So thank you for that.
Really, I have to thank you and Justin Brannan and Corey Johnson. It's been very nice to have your support through this time. And it's also thanking all the New Yorkers who bring us the injured birds. There are thousands every year. We have 9,000 birds this year, but that means 8,000 individuals brought in those animals.
Yeah.
New Yorkers care.
Yeah.
They care a great deal.
Rita, could I just ask you, as I've asked some of the other people who have testified this morning, if you are, and I just want to keep it short, if you're in support of clarifying my bill so that it also includes eliminating indoor lighting in city-owned buildings, and also to address the same issue in the contracts that the city has on city leased buildings. If you're in support of those 2 things, could you please add that to your testimony and submit it for the record, because your advocacy here is incredibly important.
It's already noted and done. It will be done.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Rosenthal, and thank you, Rita. It's not every day that I get to talk to a legend, but I have that privilege today. And please hold my feet to the fire. Chief of Staff and Budget Director is Henry Yam, Y-A-M. He's not a hard guy to find, nor am I. And we look forward to your request for funding in the next council budget cycle. And so
thank you.
You bet, Rita. Thank you very much. And I see a thumbs up from from Helen. And so, Mr. Moderator, do we have more witnesses, right?
Yes, we have one last speaker registered for this hearing, Laura Leopardo.
Starting time.
Hi, my name is Laura Leopardo, and I'm testifying on behalf of Voters for Animal Rights. Thank you so much, Chairman Gennaro, for holding this important hearing. I'm asking that you pass intros 274, 265, and 271, the light pollution bills. One of the unfortunate things about going last is a lot of the things that I have to testify have already been stated. However, I actually am going to reiterate them because I'm going to read what I've prepared, but also I think it's important because some of the numbers that I'm stating and have been stated previously are quite astronomical. So given that, I'd like to start out by sharing how birds are important members of our ecosystem. They play a vital role in controlling insects and rodents, act as pollinators, and provide seed dispersal, all of which are tangible benefits to us. However, a recent study published by the journal titled Science found that since the 1970s, there has been a 29% loss in the total number of birds. So that's about 3 billion in North America alone. With the great emptying of the skies, there are now 3 billion fewer beaks to snap up insects, 3 billion fewer pairs of wings for moving nutrients, pollens, and seeds through the world. In addition, according to the Audubon Society, 2/3 of our existing birds in North America are at risk of extinction due to climate change. That spells a lot of trouble for our important bird friends. Now, let's add the additional facts of light pollution to the above equation. As has been said, the New York City Audubon Society has stated that there's about 230,000 birds that die each year in New York City alone after colliding with glass buildings, and with light pollution being a very significant factor in these collisions. Birds migrate at night, which has been stated, and are attracted to the artificial lights. The lights on tall buildings disorient them and confuse the navigation systems of the unlucky ones that have these buildings in their flight path. They circle the buildings repeatedly, frequently, and painstakingly strike transparent or reflective windows or die of exhaustion. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, this phenomenon has led to the death of an estimated 500 million to 1 billion birds annually just in the United States alone. In addition to saving the lives of countless birds, these bills would, in turn, reduce energy consumption and thus be a logical part of our city's sustainability strategy by reducing our carbon footprint. I do thank the Council for recently passing Intro 1482 in 2019, which requires bird-safe glass in new construction. This was an important step towards improving our relationship.
Time expired.
Please continue. Please continue, Laura. You've waited to the last. You have the floor.
Thank you. Just another minute. This was an important step towards improving our relationship to our environment, but these light protection bills will address the additional factor of lights and on all buildings, not newly built ones, and thereby add an important and much needed safety measure to the vulnerable birds. We are the guardians of Earth, and it is our job to make sure our birds remain a significant and important element of our ecosystem. Thank you again to the committee, to Council Member Rosenthal and Gennaro. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura, very much. I think your testimony was like the perfect capstone to the hearing. There were certain things that I think certainly bared being, repeated, and of course we want the full text of your statement so that we could give it its proper due. And so I really do appreciate that. Mr. Moderator, at the risk of violating protocol, I did see that somebody asked to be recognized. I think it was Catherine Skopik. We don't ordinarily do this, but if Catherine has something to add, I'll give her a little latitude, and I will recall her if she wishes to be recalled.
Thank you, Chair Gennaro. I appreciate that. Just very briefly, just to kind of add something from Margaret Lee said, taking care of our animals. In the wintertime, you probably all know this being birders, but when it's below freezing, put fresh water out for the birds. But the thing I wanted to add is, just as we have 1482 about the glass, that any laws that we have about the lights out should be enforced. As Council Member Helen Rosenthal is working to get interior light reduced as well, possibly. We do have those rules that when you have the lighting system, so that when a person walks into the room, the light goes out. When they leave, it goes on. Then when they leave, it goes out. And anecdotally, I've heard that a lot of our buildings, and someone else has mentioned this, that our lights are on that are vacant rooms. They don't even need to be there. So I believe there is some form of a rule that this kind of lighting system should be installed in all present and new buildings. And the last thing I would like to say is that our sister city, Paris, France, if you go back to 2015, Daphne, I forget her last name, was the elected official in Paris, who got the City of Lights to reduce their lights. So we might also want to take a look at what Paris has done. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate I don't ordinarily do that, but I chose to recall you, but that's going to be it. I'm not going to recall anybody else. And just some notes for staff. Remember, we want to get Navi, we want to get the full text of the REBNY testimony. We want to get the details from Larry Schnaff about 2460 and whatever else, like whatever other notes I made to staff during the hearing. Let's start working on that. Today we don't have a lot of time to get this all done, and we want to get this we want to get these bills passed. We want to get them passed now, and so let's clean up all the loose ends, have a look at whatever needs to be looked at, and move forward. With that said, I'd like to thank the moderator, thank the staff of the committee, my legislative director, Nabi Kaur, and most important, and the sergeants for running the hearing, making sure everything works. They do a great job doing that. And last but certainly not least, all the people who gave of their time to be with us today, give us the benefit of their views to make these bills even better than they are. We certainly do, we certainly do appreciate that and recognize all the work that you do on behalf of, whether it be birds or brownfield or anything that this subject touched. Everyone works very hard in the vineyard. When they're not here testifying, we want to recognize all of your good work in all of your respective fields. And with that said, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you all very much for participating.